What if I told you there's a forbidden secret, a silent power known only to the women who are profoundly, deeply happier alone? Have you ever felt that gnawing emptiness, that sense that society has sold you a lie about needing a man to be complete? Today, we shatter that lie. I am about to reveal something so profound it will radically transform how you see yourself, your life, and the very meaning of love. This isn't just another self-help video. This is an awakening. I promise you, by the end of our time together, you will understand the irresistible magnetism of a woman who is whole on her own. A power so immense that the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung himself would call it the ultimate sign of individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you were always meant to be. For centuries, you've been conditioned to believe that being alone is a failure, a sentence of incompleteness. You were taught to wait for a prince who, let's be honest, rarely shows up. And even when he does, the fairy tale ending is often a myth. But what if being alone isn't a curse, but the key to unlocking your truest, most powerful self? What if it's the path to becoming the freest woman you know? Before we dive into this life-changing secret, I have a small but important request. An incredible number of you who find healing in these videos are not yet subscribed. If this message is already striking a chord deep within you, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the revelations we have coming. And please, give this video a like. It's a simple act that helps this truth reach more women who are suffering in silence. And one more thing, I want to feel our connection across the globe. Comment below with the city or country you're watching from, so we can see just how far the powerful teachings of Carl Jung are spreading to heal the world. Now, prepare yourself. The truth awaits. Carl Jung believed that a great part of our suffering comes precisely from living our lives according to scripts that are not our own. When we deny our essence, we get stuck in social masks, in roles that do not belong to us. And the myth of the incomplete woman without a man is exactly that, a mask created to tame feminine power. But every mask begins to crack when the inner truth awakens, and that's where the conflict is born. Society tells you one thing, but your soul screams another. Do you feel this tension, this restlessness that silently accompanies you? Now pay attention to something curious. Neuroscience studies have already shown that when a woman decides to live alone by choice, areas of the brain linked to creativity, independence, and self-esteem are activated in an extraordinary way. This means that your mind literally expands, creating new connections that were previously dormant. It's as if conscious solitude were a secret key to access deeper layers of your own potential. Interesting, isn't it? So why do so many people insist on believing that being alone is a failure? The answer is simple and, at the same time, disturbing. Because a free woman is frightening. A woman who knows how to be self-sufficient, does not let herself be manipulated, does not accept crumbs of affection, does not remain in toxic relationships just for fear of loneliness. And that, my friend, is a threat to the system that feeds on your insecurity. Do you realize the dimension of this? The independent woman is an act of rebellion against centuries of conditioning. But here a new question arises. Do all women who live alone reach this state of completeness? The answer is no. Because there is a gigantic difference between being alone by circumstance and being alone by decision. And it is this difference that will separate the woman who flourishes from the one who becomes bitter. This is the first step we need to understand before moving on to the next part of this video. That's why I want you to stay with me until the end, because I'm still going to show you how this silent force transforms into magnetism, into power of attraction, into an energy that not only changes your life, but also changes how the world sees you. The secret I will reveal later may completely redefine your way of loving, of relating, and mainly of relating to yourself. And if this message has already touched you in some way, I ask you to like this video right now. It seems like a simple gesture, but it helps us profoundly to bring this content to more women who need to hear these truths. And take the opportunity to subscribe to our channel, Conciencia en Silencio, because here you will find reflections based on Carl Jung and other great thinkers that can illuminate your journey of self-knowledge. Get ready, because we are just beginning. The lie of the incomplete woman has already begun to be dismantled, but what comes next will challenge your beliefs even more. After all, what really happens inside a woman's soul when she chooses conscious solitude? That's what you'll find out in the next part. There is a huge difference between being alone because life put you in that situation, and being alone because you consciously decided that this is the best way to live at this moment. This difference changes everything. It changes the energy you transmit. It changes the way you relate to others. It even changes the way your body responds emotionally to the world. Carl Jung used to say that when we run away from ourselves, we fall into repetitive patterns that imprison us, and being alone without having made peace with this condition is one of those invisible prisons. Think of two women. The first is alone by circumstance. She recently ended a relationship. Perhaps she got divorced or lost her partner. Deep down, she feels that being alone is a lack, a need. Every morning, she wakes up with the feeling that a piece is missing in her life. When she goes to a family dinner, she feels the weight of her relatives' gazes, indirectly asking, "So, when are you going to find someone?" This woman carries an invisible cloud over her head, the cloud of others' expectations and her own self-criticism. Now imagine the second woman. She also lives alone, but differently. She wakes up and organizes her morning according to what gives her pleasure. A silent walk, preparing coffee the way she likes it, listening to a song that brings back good memories. For her, the house is a space of creation, of rest, of freedom. When someone asks why she is alone, she answers with serenity, "Because I'm fine like this." She doesn't live in waiting, she lives in the present. This woman, even without realizing it, transmits something magnetic, because she is not asking for anything from the world, only offering herself the space to exist fully. This difference is visible even in the body. Studies show that a woman who lives in constant emotional need produces more cortisol, the stress hormone. This woman's body remains on alert as if it were at war. This ages you, generates anxiety, erodes self-esteem. It's as if she were carrying an invisible sign that says, "I need to be rescued." And this sign, believe me, is perceived by others unconsciously. In contrast, the woman who finds security in herself awakens another type of internal chemistry: serotonin, dopamine, endorphins. The brain sends signals of fullness, the body relaxes, the smile becomes lighter, the eyes shine in a different way. This energy is not manufactured. It cannot be faked. It is a direct result of a choice. The choice to accept loneliness as an ally and not as a punishment. How many times have you noticed that in moments of desperation, you ended up attracting the exact opposite of what you wanted? That relationship that started fast, full of promises, but soon proved to be a repetition of the past. Jung would say that this is not a coincidence. It is the unconscious repeating patterns, trying to force you to look inside. And until that look is deep and honest, the stories continue to repeat themselves with different faces. A patient of mine years ago illustrates this. She was afraid of being alone after a painful divorce. So, in a few months, she got into another relationship. He seemed attentive at first, but soon showed traits of control and contempt. When we talked, she confessed, "I knew it wasn't right, but the silence at home terrified me. It was better to put up with him than to face myself." That phrase stuck with me, because the silence that terrified her so much was the same one that could have become her greatest source of healing. But without understanding this, she remained trapped in the cycle. This is the micro-conflict that so many women experience between the fear of being alone and the desire to be respected and loved for real. Deep down, it's as if there's a constant internal battle. The soul asks for freedom, but the mind, shaped by years of conditioning, asks for company at any cost. This tension is exhausting. And the question that remains is, how long will you run away from yourself to avoid facing this emptiness? Jung reminds us that the void is not an enemy, but a portal. The silence of solitude can be the space where we finally listen to ourselves, where we understand what our true desires, our wounds, our gifts are. But this requires courage. The courage not to be distracted by the first promise of cheap affection. The courage to look in the mirror and ask, Who am I when, no one is watching me? In 2025, this question becomes even more urgent. We live in an era of digital hyperconnection, where everyone seems to be in perfect relationships on social media. Comparing oneself has become a collective addiction. For many women between 30 and 65, this contrast hurts even more, because in addition to social pressure, there is the feeling that time is passing, that maybe it's already too late. But here is the truth. It is never too late to choose yourself. It is never too late to transform silence into strength, loneliness into freedom. And here I leave a reflection. Isn't it precisely at the moment when you stop desperately searching outside that something begins to flourish inside? Isn't it this flourishing that paradoxically makes you a more magnetic, more authentic, more whole woman? Perhaps the big question is not whether you are alone or with someone, but rather where your choice comes from fear or from self-love. This is the crossroads, and every woman who learns to recognize it begins to write a new story, a story in which loneliness ceases to be a lack and becomes a presence, a story in which living alone is not a burden, but a declaration of completeness. Because in the end, it's not about being without a man, it's about being with yourself. And that is the greatest act of courage a woman can perform. There is something that is rarely spoken of, but that all women who have experienced living alone know in silence. Freedom is as frightening as it is liberating. Because when you don't have to answer to anyone, when your routine, your choices, and even your small pleasures depend only on you, an inevitable question arises. And now, who am I really? Jung said that the soul's greatest confrontation is not with the other, but with our own shadow. And chosen or imposed solitude is the most relentless mirror of this shadow. But what exactly happens when you stop shaping your life around a partner? Curiously, it is in this empty space that dormant desires flourish. How many times have you repressed a dream because it didn't fit into the we of a relationship? Perhaps you stopped traveling, studying something new, redecorating the house, or even adopting a lifestyle you always wanted. When the house becomes only yours, when the decisions are yours, something awakens. It's as if life for the first time asks you, what if now you could choose without asking for permission? And here I want you to stop for a second and reflect. When was the last time you did something just for you, without needing to justify it, without thinking about what others would say? Put in the comments what desire you have been postponing for years, and that perhaps solitude is precisely the chance to realize it. Sharing this can be a first step of courage, and you will realize that other women also carry guarded dreams like yours. The shock, however, comes soon after, because at the same time that freedom opens doors, it exposes scars. Many women discover that they never learned to like their own company. And when the house is silent, what should be a refuge becomes an internal battlefield. That's when the emptiness begins to speak loudly, and with it come memories of rejection, old guilts, fears of not being enough. Jung called this the encounter with the shadow, when what you have always hidden finally asks to be looked at. But does this encounter have to be terrifying? What if instead of running away from it, you
started treating it as an initiation? Imagine that each discomfort is a disguised teacher, bringing messages about where you still need to heal. Solitude is not the absence of company, but the presence of yourself before yourself. How many people go through their entire lives without ever having this experience? There are women who, in this process, discover something surprising. The body begins to respond in another way. Sleep improves, creativity awakens, even sexuality is transformed. Without
needing to meet the expectations of a man, they begin to explore their own intimacy in a freer and more profound way. The house, which was once just a physical space, becomes a temple, a place of experimentation, of reconnection, of authentic pleasure. Have you ever stopped to think what your life would be like if you transformed your home into a space that reflected exactly who you are? And here comes a fascinating curiosity. Recent research shows that single women without children, on average, have higher levels of well-being and longevity than many who live in traditional relationships. This shatters an entire paradigm. the idea that fulfillment would only come alongside a partner. Isn't it exactly this myth that keeps so many women trapped in unhappy relationships? Could it be that true completeness is not born from the moment you understand that your life is whole, even without the validation of another? I want to propose something to you. Write in the comments a sentence that summarizes how you see your relationship with solitude today. It doesn't matter if it's positive or painful. This sharing can become a way to transform your experience into something collective. You will realize that you are not alone, that many others are crossing this same silent path. But be careful. Not every woman who lives alone is truly at peace with herself. There is a brutal difference between chosen solitude and solitude carried as a burden. The first generates magnetism. The second creates bitterness. And the world perceives it. People perceive it. Have you ever met someone whose energy seemed heavy, as if every word were a complaint? And have you ever met women who, even alone, radiate joy, independence, and an almost palpable confidence? This difference is not in the fact that they are single, but in the way they have interpreted this condition. And perhaps this is the question that matters most. Do you now experience solitude as a condemnation or as a rebirth? Because if you feel it as a condemnation, there are still wounds asking to be looked at. But if you have already begun to experience it as a rebirth, then you are accessing a power that few people in life get to touch. Deep down, society is afraid of women like that, and it's not hard to understand why. A woman who does not depend on anyone is uncontrollable, unpredictable, a force of nature. Jung would remind us that this is the archetype of the woman who reconciles with her own essence, a figure who has always challenged imposed standards. And perhaps the biggest secret is this: when you learn to be self-sufficient, you not only become free, you become magnetic to everything that is true, be it love, be it purpose, be it life. There is a recurring scene that many women report in my consultations, that of arriving at family gatherings and hearing, almost like a ritual, the uncomfortable question, "And boyfriends? When are you going to get married?" This demand, which seems harmless to the person asking, often acts as an invisible wound that is repeated over the years. It's as if the woman, because she is alone, is forced to justify her existence. But what happens when she doesn't explain herself, when she simply looks them in the eye and answers with serenity, "I'm fine like this"? This small gesture can be revolutionary. It is then that we begin to see how much society still fears the woman who does not need to be saved. Carl Jung stated that what we repress in the collective, unconscious, ends up gaining strength in social judgments. And the independent woman is exactly that, a cultural shadow. Over the centuries, we were taught that a woman needed marriage to have status, to be respected, even to survive financially. But in the 21st century, and now in 2025, statistics are beginning to dismantle this paradigm. In the United States, for example, a survey by Pew Research revealed that single women without children report higher levels of personal satisfaction than the average for married women. In Brazil, IBGE research shows that the number of female heads of household has grown exponentially, reaching more than 47% of homes. This means that almost half of the homes today are supported by women who at some point decided not to depend on a partner to move forward. But the numbers are just the surface. Behind them are stories that touch deeply. I think of a patient who told me, "I was terrified of loneliness. I thought I wouldn't be able to stand a single night without someone by my side. Today, after 2 years of living alone, I wonder how I lived so long without knowing myself." This phrase echoes like a powerful whisper, because when loneliness is faced head-on, it ceases to be an absence and becomes a mirror. And in this mirror, many women discover that they are stronger, more creative, and more resilient than they ever imagined. Perhaps you have already noticed something similar in your own life. When there is no one to decide for you, even the small details take on another meaning. The dish you choose to cook, the time you go to sleep, the silence that fills the house. These moments that seem trivial are daily exercises in autonomy. But at the same time, it is in this silence that difficult questions also arise. Am I growing old alone? Will I regret it? These are legitimate questions, but they hide a deeper point. The fear is not of loneliness itself. but of facing oneself without disguises. And here is an unexpected fact. Neuroscience studies indicate that people who learn to cultivate moments of solitude, that chosen and conscious loneliness, develop greater brain plasticity, that is, a greater ability to adapt to changes, learn new skills, and deal with complex situations. This means that being well alone not only strengthens the mind, but literally reconfigures the brain for resilience. Have you ever imagined that what society calls a lack may, in fact, be one of the greatest emotional and cognitive trainings a woman can experience? It is at this point that a painful contrast arises. While some women flourish alone, others sink into resentment. And the difference is not in the condition, but in the perspective. Those who see loneliness as a choice transform the empty space into a garden. Those who see it as a condemnation transform it into a desert. This leads me to a reflection I want to share with you. What have you been doing with the space that life has given you? Because loneliness is not the problem. It is just a piece of land. What grows on it depends on what you plant. There is also the cultural weight. In Latin countries, female singlehood is still surrounded by stigmas. The words used, solterona, spinster, ficu para titia, she was left to be an aunt, carry a symbolic violence that goes far beyond joking. But what if we inverted the logic? Why don't we call a 50-year-old man with no children a solteron, bachelor? On the contrary, he is often seen as free, successful, even admired. This double standard is not just unfair, it is inhuman, because it robs a woman of the possibility of building her identity without comparisons. And this is where Jung becomes essential. He said that the true process of individuation requires breaking with imposed social roles to reveal who we really are. For the woman who lives alone, this process can be radical. She ceases to be someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother, and becomes just herself. And although this is frightening, it is precisely where authenticity is born. A woman who knows herself deeply does not need to prove anything to anyone. Think for a moment. How many women do you know who, even with a partner, live trapped by fear, neediness, and insecurity? And how many have you seen who, being alone, seem to radiate a silent peace, as if they have finally found an internal axis that does not depend on anything external? This difference is palpable. You feel it when you enter a room, as if the energy were different. And perhaps the most surprising thing of all is to realize that this choice even has effects on health. Studies published in the Journal of Women's Health show that women who learn to cultivate emotional autonomy have a lower incidence of depression and anxiety in the long term. The reason? When you don't depend on someone to feel complete, you drastically reduce the chances of submitting to toxic relationships, which protects your mind and your body. Independence is not just a beautiful speech. It is a real form of care. But one question remains. Why do so many women feel they need to justify themselves for living alone? The answer may lie in the collective unconscious that Jung described. For generations, we have been taught to believe that our identity lies in the other. Breaking with this narrative requires courage, because it means facing not only external judgments, but the internal echoes of centuries of conditioning. It is an arduous but profoundly transformative path, and perhaps the real secret lies there. Loneliness is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a deeper journey. It is the gateway to self-knowledge, to the individuation that Jung so much described. And every time a woman chooses to live fully with herself, she not only transforms her own life, she challenges centuries of history that insist on saying that this is not possible. Because in the end, the question is not whether you can live without a man. The question is, are you ready to finally live with yourself? We have reached a crucial point in this reflection. After all, what does it really mean to live alone without a man? Throughout this journey, we have demystified prejudices, faced statistics, visited cultural shadows, and delved into the emotional impact that chosen solitude can have. Now it's time to bring it all together and understand why for many women, this choice represents not only freedom, but also one of the purest forms of self-knowledge and personal power. Living alone consciously is not synonymous with isolation or escape. On the contrary, it is an act of courage. It means allowing yourself to look inside without distractions, without intermediaries, without masks. How many times does life in society push us into roles that distance us from who we really are? How many women have lived for decades in relationships, not out of love, but out of fear of being alone? This realization is harsh, but it reveals something essential. The greatest relationship any human being can have is with their own essence. And for many women, living without depending on a man is the most direct path to this discovery. When Jung spoke of individuation, he was referring to this unique process of becoming who you truly are. And the woman who chooses to walk alone takes giant steps in this direction. She ceases to define herself by the gaze of the other and begins to build her identity from within. The result is an authenticity that shines effortlessly. And this authenticity has visible consequences. Improvement in emotional health, clarity in decisions, healthier relationships when they happen, in addition to a natural magnetism that does not need to be manufactured. After all, who is not attracted to someone who is at peace with themselves? But we cannot deny the challenges. There is indeed an emotional cost to living alone, especially in cultures that still look at the independent woman as if she had failed in some secret life. Mission. The judgmental gaze of family members, the veiled pressure from married friends, the little jokes at social gatherings, all of this weighs on you. However, each obstacle is also an invitation to internal strengthening. And here is the truth that no one told you. The same loneliness that initially frightens can become the fertile ground where your greatest strength is born. Notice how this connects to something bigger. A woman who supports herself emotionally opens up space to choose healthy relationships and not to cling to bonds out of fear. A woman who learns to deal with silence transforms that silence into a source of creativity, clarity, and spirituality. And a woman who discovers that her life is not on hold, but in full construction, begins to inspire other women, generating an invisible current of transformation. This is the collective power of individual choice. Every time a woman authorizes herself to be whole alone, others around her begin to question their own invisible prisons. And here is a point that deserves to be emphasized. Many people believe that being alone is synonymous with failure, but the most recent research shows the opposite. Single women tend to cultivate wider support networks, invest more in their physical health, travel more, learn more, explore more. This does not mean that living as a couple is wrong or lesser. It just means that life without a partner can also be, and often is, rich, deep, and complete. So, the question is not whether you have someone by your side or not, but whether you are capable of being whole in any circumstance. Now, think about yourself. How many times have you put off making a decision for fear of being alone? How many dreams have been put away because somehow you believed that it would only make sense to realize them with someone by your side? This is the silent prison that so many women carry, and it is precisely this that we need to break. Because in the end, it's not about having a man or not, it's about having yourself. It's about trusting that the life you build can be full, even if it doesn't follow the traditional script. And if everything we've talked about so far still seems abstract, I want to bring it into the concrete. Living well alone requires practice. It requires small steps that, when added up, build a solid foundation. Creating self-care rituals, cultivating nourishing friendships, developing a personal purpose, investing in mental and physical health, learning to celebrate small, everyday victories. Each of these gestures is like a seed planted in the soil of your life. At first it seems small, but over time this garden becomes so strong and so beautiful that no external opinion can uproot it. And that is exactly where the turning point is. When you build this emotional autonomy, you no longer need to run away from loneliness, nor justify yourself to the world. You simply live in peace in your own center, knowing that if you choose to share your life with someone, it will be out of desire, never out of necessity, and that difference is liberating. Now my proposal is simple, but powerful. How about taking the first step to apply all of this in practice? How about transforming these reflections into concrete actions in your daily life? In the next chapter, I will show you a clear, deep, and applicable step-by-step guide on how to implement these truths in your personal life, so that you not only understand this power, but truly live it. This will be the moment to transform theory into practice, reflection into action, and ideas into real transformation. We have reached the most important moment of this journey, to transform everything you have heard so far into real action, into concrete practice in your life. It is not enough to understand intellectually that a woman can be whole living alone. It is necessary to feel it, to live it, and above all, to build a solid relationship with yourself daily. And this is where the real strategic plan for your transformation begins. The first step is radical self-knowledge. Carl Jung said that he who looks outside dreams, but he who looks inside awakens. To apply this, set aside a daily time to be with yourself without distractions. It could be 10 minutes of silence, a journal where you write your emotions, or even a walk without a cell phone, just with your thoughts. The goal is simple. Learn to listen to your own voice, the one that has often been muffled by external expectations. Ask yourself, what do I really want? What gives me pleasure? What distances me from my essence? These questions are keys that open doors to a more authentic life. The second step is to make self-care a priority, not an option. How many times have you put everyone's needs above your own? This inversion silently destroys self-esteem. Apply a practical rule now. Every day, do at least one thing exclusively for yourself. It could be preparing your favorite food, dancing alone in the living room, taking care of your skin, or simply resting without guilt. These are simple gestures, but they send a powerful message to your unconscious. I am important. I deserve care. The third step is to expand your support network and purpose. A woman who lives alone does not have to live in isolation. Invest in friendships that nourish your soul, in groups that share your values, in projects that awaken passion. Look for activities that connect you to other people who are also seeking growth. Chosen solitude is powerful, but it is in the balance between being with yourself and opening up to the world that a rich and full life is born. Ask yourself, with whom do I want to share my energy? In what causes do I want to put my time? Clarity in these choices brings strength and direction. The fourth step is to redefine your relationship with loneliness. Instead of treating it as a burden, treat it as a teacher. Use silence to create. Use the moments alone to plan. Use the space of solitude to discover facets of yourself that were dormant. Whenever the fear of loneliness appears, remember, it is not an enemy, but an invitation to reconnect with yourself on ever deeper levels. The fifth step is the most transformative. Build a vision of the future based on your completeness. Don't wait for life to begin when a relationship comes along. Life is happening now. Write in detail what your dream life would be like if you were fully true to yourself. Where would you live? What would you be doing? What kind of experiences would you like to have? Create this vision and then start taking small steps to get closer to it. This practice puts you at the center of your own story, making you the protagonist instead of a spectator. And here is the essential point. This journey is not linear. There will be days when you feel powerful and whole, and others when insecurity will knock on the door. But it is precisely in these moments that you need to remember. Every step taken in the direction of self-knowledge and self-love is irreversible. Once you experience the taste of emotional freedom, you will never again settle for crumbs. And so, we reach not an end, but a powerful new beginning. I want to speak directly to the part of you that awakened today. If this message resonated deep in your soul, if you felt the truth in these words describing a life you've only dared to imagine, know this: you are not alone. A silent revolution is happening. A global community of women just like you are answering the same sacred call to wholeness. You have been given the key to unlock your own completeness, to turn the theory of Carl Jung into the reality of your life. This is your moment, the moment to choose yourself, finally and completely. The moment to step out of the shadow of others' expectations and into the magnificent light of who you truly are. The journey we started today is the first step towards a freedom you may have never thought possible. And believe me, what we uncovered today is just the tip of the iceberg. The path of individuation holds even deeper secrets to unlocking your personal power, and I will be here to guide you through them. If you feel this transformation beginning, I invite you to make it official. An incredible number of people who watch these videos and change their lives are not yet subscribed. Solidify your commitment to yourself by hitting that subscribe button now, so you don't miss the crucial next steps on this journey. Please, also give this video a like to help this liberating message find every woman who needs to hear it. And before you go, I want you to do one powerful thing in the comments below. Write the one word that describes how you feel right now, knowing that your completeness comes from within. Your story, your word, could be the spark that ignites another woman's path. Thank you for your courage. Your new life starts now.